This video is sponsored by Fiverr, connecting you with the freelance talent you need to help you build your brand, including logo designers, copywriters, website developers, and even taco makers. Just kidding. Check out my personally curated store for my recent recommendations of top Fiverr sellers and taco makers. So this video was actually inspired by my two friends, Daniel Schiffer and James Matthews, who both made videos talking about how to shoot handheld B-roll. By the way, if you haven't seen any of their videos, then definitely watch it now before you continue watching this video, because for one, it's just amazing, just packed with tons of information, but also what they talk about in their videos, I'm going to sum up in this video, as well as add one more element that I believe is the icing on the cake for any B-roll footage.
What's going on, you lot? Alright guys, first and foremost.
First of all, it was really cool to see Daniel and James in action and just see them control the scene and trying to tell a story with what they had, and what they came up with what they had just speaks volumes to their talent. With Daniel, it was really cool to see him block the scenes and rehearse it several times before he actually recorded on the camera. And with James, it was really cool to see him improvising on the spot, trying to figure out what kind of elements that he could use to tell a story. Just like with Daniel, he was blocking the scenes, he was rehearsing it before he actually pressed record, which leads me to my first takeaway to film epic B-roll, and that's film with editing in mind. So what do I mean by filming with editing in mind? Well, it actually means that you're filming and editing the video in your head at the same time. With both Daniel and James, they were filming certain shots because they knew they would use those shots in a particular sequence. And you can clearly see that in Daniel's video when you can see him transition between two shots by simply moving the camera down. It just makes for a really clever way to tell a story seamlessly. Also, it doesn't have to be about the shot itself, but it could be something more symbolic or something that relates more to the story arc. For example, you could start off your scene with the opening of a book, and maybe it might be a good idea to end your video with the closing of a book, you know, kind of bookend your story. But the importance with filming with editing in mind is that it helps give you a direction.
Okay, on the count of three, you're gonna break it apart. Okay, ready? 1, 2, and 3.
Takeaway number 2, diversify your shots. Now, what I mean by diversifying your shots is having a mix of wide shots, medium shots, close-ups, extreme close-ups, static shots where the camera's on a tripod, or moving shots where the camera is on a gimbal or a glide cam or even handheld. Basically, you gotta give yourself all these different types of shots for you to play with when you're editing in post. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have a static wide shot the entire time. So if you're filming at the beach, yes, it makes sense to film a wide shot of the beach, but maybe try to get a close-up of the sand or the pebbles, or maybe the wind blowing through someone's hair. You want to give yourself what's called coverage in post, meaning you've covered a decent amount of B-roll footage of different elements in a particular scene so that when you're editing it later on, you have choices to choose from. But if all you have is one static wide shot of a particular scene, then it's kind of boring. I mean, you may want that, and that could work too, but generally speaking, it's a good idea to diversify your shots when you're filming B-roll. Both Daniel and James do that very well. I mean, they have this assortment of shots that they just mix seamlessly together, and it's beautiful. Even in the video that I shot, there's a mix of fast edits, slow edits, but the only thing that I do regret about my video is that I didn't have a wider shot to establish the scene. I mean, we kind of got the gist of it, we kind of got the story, but it would have been nice to see a wider shot of the entire kitchen. Learn from my mistakes. Diversify your shots. Takeaway number 3, look for the details. Now, Daniel and James do this very well, whether it's through close-ups of the fruit that they shot or capturing the sharpness of the knife. Details like this for your B-roll footage is gold because it gives a sense to the audience of what the elements in the scene are. For Daniel's video, there was a shot of the actor scooping up the avocado, and with that shot, you can kind of sense the freshness of that avocado. I did the same thing with my video when my wife was chopping up the cilantro and then gathering the cherry tomatoes and the cilantro and putting it into the water. walk, you can kind of sense all those flavors kind of mixing together and just smelling really good. And it did smell good, really good. We had a good dinner that night. I just realized that we all filmed videos centered on food. That was not intentional. Food aside, there are other ways that you can do this. Say for example that it's winter and you want to give your audience a sense of how cold it really is. Sure, you can get a wide shot of a snow-covered city or even a snow-covered house, but to really emphasize on how cold it is, maybe get a close-up of the snow, or maybe get a close-up of your frozen windshield on your car. Or if there are icicles forming on your roof or on a tree, maybe get a close-up shot of that. Seeing a detail like an object being frozen over or iced over really informs the audience that, man, this is cold. So you start off your scene with the snow-covered city or your snow-covered house, then cut to some shots of your iced over windshield or the ice on the floor or icicles forming on your roof or on a tree. Then maybe throw in a sound effect of some winter wind howling around just to bring it all together to really emphasize that, man, this place is cold. Like my ex-girlfriend's heart. Oh, burn, burn. This is what winter wind sounds like. Oh, that sounds like a radio. So that's takeaway number 3. Look for the details.
And this is called potato peeler.
Why is it called a potato peeler?
Because it peels potatoes.
And the last takeaway that I got from Daniel and James's video is sound design. Adding some sweet audio to your B-roll. Both Daniel and James did a really amazing job adding sound design to their B-roll footage. In Daniel's video, you get a sense of how sharp the knife is when it's pulled out and chops a cucumber. And in James' video, you get a sense of the flavors mixed in the cocktail when it's being poured into the glass. Both give the audience a really good sense of what the elements in the scene are. And you might think, well, why would they add audio to B-roll footage? I mean, shouldn't it just be B-roll on its own? And no, Frank, it shouldn't be. I mean, when you add audio to your B-roll footage, it just, I don't want to say it personifies your scene, but it almost brings it to life. For my video, here's a sequence without any sound effects. Now here's the same sequence with sound effects. You can just really sense the elements in the scene because of those sound effects. Now both Daniel and James did an amazing job with sound design, but there's one more element that I think is the icing on the cake for any B-roll footage, and that's human dialogue. When you add human dialogue on top of the other sound design elements, it just makes the entire viewing experience a lot more immersive. You've got the visuals, you got the audio from the music, you got the sound design just to get a sense of the environment, and now you have human dialogue, which just adds another layer to your story. For example, here's a sequence from my video with just B-roll. Now let's add sound effects. And now let's add dialogue.
Smell all those different spices.
I'm going to mix it.
And boom, you now have a sequence that's layered with all these elements in sound design that really completes the story. For me, I wanted to use their dialogue to set up this conversation between my kids and my wife, and as my wife was teaching my kids how to cook, them asking questions, and to me, that's what the story is. It's a story of my wife teaching my kids how to prep and cook food, and seeing the curiosity of my kids as they're spending time with their mom. And you just get a good sense of that with all these layers of sound design, and honestly, that's what good sound design is. Layers of audio that tell a story. Big thanks to Fiverr for sponsoring this episode. And if you're building a business or a brand, then Fiverr is the platform to connect you with a global audience of freelancers to help you do just that. Fiverr has a roster of amazing talent, including logo designers, copywriters, website developers, growth hackers, SEO specialists, and more. So what are you waiting for? Check out my curated store in the description below for my recommendations of top Fiverr sellers. And if there's anything else you'd like to see on my store that isn't already there, then feel free to send me a message. Alright guys, well I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell buttons down below, and I'll see ya in the next one.